All right, you're almost done. So this is the last video, I promise. And we're just going to tie up some loose ends and actually see if we covered the 6304 completely. I hope I didn't get too sidetracked with things. All right, so if you go to our website, there's this mapping table, which I showed to you earlier. And beware, this video will be extremely boring, I think, because we'll be going through this mapping table and we'll just be, going through the mapping table, which, oh man, okay. So first off, I think one good thing to keep in mind is if you fill out all our templates, you're done with the 6304, obviously, because if you look through the mapping table, oh wait, we're actually not going through the mapping table, then you can see each of these 6304 requirements here. It has one of our templates which fulfills this requirement. So for example, the software development and maintenance plan, it fulfills quite a lot of requirements of the 6304, for example, here defining software integration and integration test planning, whatever that is. Well, I should know. I run this company. Anyway, so we can actually kind of like take a shortcut here and we can simply go back to our template section and look at all the templates, because if we fill all of these out and if we've talked about all of these, then we are 6304 compliant. And it doesn't really mean we have to fill every template out, but because some of them we've fulfilled by using formwork, right? So you might be not doing a software requirements list document, you might be documenting your software requirements in formwork instead, and then you're also compliant, of course. All right, so let's see which templates we talked about. So we have the bug fix documentation list, we talked about that, we talked about change evaluation in the last video. We talked about software release. We talked about the reviews, so the software requirements review, the user needs review, and I think there's also an architecture review. Oh no, there's the architecture checklist. I think, yeah, so it's a software architecture checklist. So we talked about those things, I think. This document roadmap, that by the way is actually more of a template which kind of like helps you look at the different things. Like it's not something you have to fill out. You can take a look if you want in the end. Mapping table, we talked about that. Okay, so now we have a few machine learning templates. We didn't talk about these in this video or in this course. Maybe I'll record a second course yet. That being said, it only concerns you if you have machine learning, some sort of machine learning model as part of your product. And it's not even part of the 6304, because again, the 6304 was written back when dinosaurs were walking on the earth, which was like 20 to 30 years ago. And machine learning wasn't really a thing there. So the machine learning requirements we have nowadays, they are more like defined by notified bodies. So we based our templates on those requirements. So you can take a look at those, and many of them have pretty good like example text. So you can say like, hey, what sort of data, like how were you getting like your training data, and then like, okay, what were your specifications of training data, blah, 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 and then you just like say what you did. So I'll kind of like skip those for now, as again, strictly speaking, it's not 6304 compliance. List of known anomalies. Oh man, we didn't talk about that. So technically, you need to fill this out before you release it. And that's if your software contains something called known anomalies. So essentially, you still have bugs in your software and you haven't fixed them yet, but you still want to release your software. So you have to like document this so-called list of known anomalies. The simplest way to do that, as always, and I won't show you another time, you probably know how to do this, is to do this in the formwork record section. So as always, wait, I'm actually showing you how to do this. You navigate to the eQMS section, open regulatory templates, choose the record, and then you say create a new record in this products section. So you do that, but that should be done really quickly. So this is really not a lot of work. List of medical devices, that's just like a template which you need to like have somewhere, probably actually in your quality management system. So in this case, in this section, in the eQMS section. And yeah, I mean, it's just, you probably just have a table with one entry, right? You have like your device name and then when it's released, and that's it. Like some auditors, they like to have this overview of like which medical devices exist in this company. And it's like, yeah, I mean, no shit, most startups have one device. Okay, tells you many things about how auditors think, I guess. Okay, so now you have another machine learning template. Again, I'm skipping that for now. Software architecture checklist and description. We talked about architecture earlier. We talked about the development and maintenance plan. We talked a lot about software requirements, talked quite a bit about software tests. We talked about change management too. And maybe as a quick side note, we talked about how you do change management, how you document that. We didn't really talk about the SOP. So the only SOP we actually talked about was the SOP integrated software development. But you have a few more SOPs here. And that's simply because the 60304 requires you to have these SOPs. So for example, the 60304 says, yeah, you need to have a process which it describes how you do software development. Now, the 60304 also tells you to do some other things, like how you do change management, for example. So if you take a look at this, and I won't talk about that too much in detail because it's actually, well, kind of like just read the template, and the template is this template is very minimalistic. Like, okay, you create a change request, you evaluate the change, and then you implement it. It's quite simple. So there, I think the best way you can learn this is actually just read our templates and take a look. And best case, you can just copy paste them, and you're already compliant. Same for deployment. So you need to like define how you do deployment, and we have a pretty good template there too. Take a look, fill it out. And same for machine learning stuff. You have something called problem resolution too, and I think those conclude the SOPs. As a quick side note, again, the SOPs, they belong in the eQMS section, in the documents section here, and best case, you have an SOP folder here, so you put them there. So don't put them in the product section. That would be pretty solid. All right, we talked about the soup list, and we talked about the user needs too. So those are solved in Formwork. If you go to the product section here on the left side, user needs, and well, define the stakeholders and define their user needs, and then you're done. And you don't need to fill out this super clunky template in whatever other software, Google Docs or Google Sheets, and so on. So we have kind of like a few more things to do. Like something I wanted to actually answer way earlier is kind of like the most common question I get asked is like, hey, can't we integrate with Jira or GitHub or whatever to link this to our whatever day-to-day usage, or even link this to our code, link this to pull requests in GitHub, for example. So let's look at those in order. Firstly, you don't need to link stuff in Formwork to pull requests. So for example, in this case, you have software requirements here, and you remember these requirements. Here, for example, you might think like, we have this software requirement. Shouldn't we kind of like link this to the actual code? And the short answer is the 60304 doesn't require you to do that. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah, technically speaking, there's no requirement to do that. That's the first answer. The second answer is it will be a gigantic mess of epic proportions, because you will have a couple, like tens or hundreds of pull requests at some stage. And now before every release, you have to go through all those pull requests and link them to software requirements. And it will be a completely epic, crazy mess. So I would recommend against it. We did it at some of our consulting clients in the very beginning, and everyone usually regretted it afterwards, even though it sounded like a good idea. So you don't need to link down to the code. I would generally advise against that. The second question is kind of like, okay, do you wonder if you want to integrate with your project management? Like, hey, could we like integrate with like Jira or Confluence or whatever, and where we have day-to-day project management, tickets, that sort of stuff? Or does Formwork have an API where we can like push those things and sync those? Thing is, the answer is no, because in most cases that simply doesn't make sense. So you could see, one example, for example, is how we do project management. We use Basecamp and we have to-dos there. And a to-do could literally be like, hey, fix a random bug. And then how should I track that in Formwork? Long story short, you shouldn't, because should I create a software requirement? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Should I create a change request? That's like too high level. So I would vote to keep those things separate. You have your regulatory documentation in Formwork, and you have your project management documentation in whatever tool you use for that. And use the best tool for its respective job. And Formwork is great for regulatory documentation. Your project management tool is great for project management. And I wouldn't really like mix those two. Still, if you want to like use some features here, we have like the board, which is pretty cool. So you could actually, if you use your software requirements and you want to get an overview over what feature is done already and what not, you could say like, maybe this one is in progress. Oh, did it just crash? Oh, okay. And then you can drag and drop stuff between the boards here, which is pretty cool. And this, it doesn't change anything in this list view. It simply allows you to kind of like keep an overview of where each feature stands implementation-wise. But this is kind of like up to you. You don't really have to use it. So yeah, your choice. Okay, two more things: hardware devices and detail design. So if you're going for 62304 Class C, then that means you have to document something called detail design, what we didn't talk about today yet. Or if you're going for FDA approval, generally speaking, for FDA compliance, they tend to want to see detail design too. So how does that work? In your product, I think we can't change this in the product. Yeah, we can change this. So in the product section, when you create a new product, let's actually do this. Do I actually have one? No, I don't. Oh man, this sucks. Do new product, and let's do test suppression app, Class C. And then you can see here, we do the software safety classification, Class C. And by the way, this also answers my next answer. Let's actually do all of that at the same time. Like the next question is like how to document hardware in a framework, and that's very simple. Simply select hardware here, or software and hardware. I do software and hardware, and then it'll be pretty self-explanatory what happens. And let's also do Class C here. Okay, so let's create that. And then there are two changes here. It's very simple. The first change is because we're Class C, you now have something called detail design. And this is kind of like underneath the software requirements level. And that's already the second change, because the software requirements are now called design inputs, because it's also a hardware device. And this is more in line with the hardware regulatory standards, which kind of like call things design inputs and less software requirements. But the other things are still mostly the same. So you can see you have stakeholders here, you have the user needs of the stakeholders, and then those get linked to the design inputs, and those get linked to the detailed design. And that's kind of like it. So if we have like a design input here, you say like, and then you have another selector here, software, hardware, or system. System is kind of like both. So let's say like, okay, let's do this again, regulation and notification. And then here's something. Now you can see you can link stuff to the detailed designs. So we created this this design input. Now we can create a detailed design. We have to link it to design input. Oh man, I'm screwing things up here by a lot. Okay, and then you could say something super technical, like use the Apple push service to show regular notifications or whatever, something like more technical. That's the idea of detailed design, because it's even lower level than the design inputs. Okay, save that, and that's it. So now you document detailed designs in addition to your software requirements, and those are also part of the audit export somewhere. Here, cool, you have the detailed design specification. That's awesome. So that kind of like answers two questions, right? Firstly, how can you do hardware devices? Simply select hardware when you create your product, and it enables a few extra fields, like the one we just saw, where you like have to enter the type of input you have here, like software, hardware, or system. And it also, by the way, it renames things to system tests. It renames software tests to system tests. And what happens if you want to do detailed design? Then yeah, select Class C when you create the product, and then you get the detailed design thing here. Now, some customers asked me like, hey, shouldn't we always do this? And like the answer is no. Of course, like if you're 62304 Class A or B, you don't need to do detailed design, and there's usually absolutely no value in documenting more than you need to do for regulatory compliance. So if you're Class B, and again, this is with like a big margin, this is like the most likely scenario if you're going for EU MDR approval that you're Class B. Select Class B in the framework, and there's no need to document detailed design. All right, so this was kind of like gathering like scraps and pieces of things which we missed in the past videos, because try to keep things a bit more like pragmatic and like closer to like, hey, let's create things and not let's read the standard from top to bottom. So that was everything there is. If you followed along with all the videos, I would say you're doing a pretty good job being 60304 compliant. As kind of like an anecdote is, auditors usually always have to find something. So even if your documentation is perfect, you will get some auditor findings, maybe because they also have weird opinions regarding things. So like approach it in this way. If you kind of like get documentation done, which is 90% great and complete, that's a really great setup. And then the auditor will kind of like tell you what you're missing. And that's cool, because then in the next review round, you like deliver the missing pieces. And that's way better than like over-engineering and overshooting and creating documentation which is 200% of that what you would actually need, because then it takes you, whatever, another extra year just to create the documentation. And in that meantime, you've kind of like run out of money, which is a pretty bad outcome as a startup. So in my opinion, you can get the 60304 documentation done in like a couple of weeks. Again, none of this was really a lot of work, like software requirements or design inputs, aim for 20 to 30, do the manual tests with like the system, like the document them in formwork, the way we saw, user needs, stakeholders, a couple of records like the soup list and the other things, and you're pretty much 60304 compliant, which is pretty cool. And formwork has you covered there, because then on the other side, you can do the audit export and all these cool spreadsheets come out on the other side. So that's a pretty cool experience. And that saves you a lot of time too. So again, there's like no crazy magical aspect to 60304 compliance, only the stuff you saw in the video so far. So I hope this was useful. We're at the end of the 60304 course. I hope like you kind of like learned something and now you're able to do the documentation by yourself and not ping us for consulting, because we actually, I like to do software and nowadays I like to do less consulting, but we actually still offer consulting. So if you have questions, you can still ping us. Short questions, we always reply to for free usually. Yeah, so we're pretty much done. There are a few more things to do. Obviously, there's the risk analysis, which we totally didn't touch upon. And there's the usability stuff, which we also didn't touch upon. So there's still some stuff to do. But for now, you're done with the software 60304 documentation. And that's pretty awesome. So thanks for watching and good luck with your company and your product.